Hi, I'm Ed China and these are the heavy-duty mowers from DELEKS. You have the Elche or Elk and you have the TORO or Bull. Now the cutting heads are pretty much the same design and do pretty much the same thing, but they're both designed to go onto a tractor with an engine of 80 horsepower and above. And the 3-point linkage comes with category 2 pins. Now the Elche has an offset and pivot head, so it's great for doing ditches and banks and that kind of stuff, whereas the TORO is much better for things like large fields that are mostly flat. And it would be considered a universal mower because it can take on almost any kind of growth. Now, what the good thing about both of these things is they can handle sticks of up to about 5 centimeters in diameter, which is pretty chunky. Now, size-wise, the Elche comes with 6 sizes going from 1.4 meters up to 2.2 meters with intervals of 20 centimeters, whereas the TORO has 4 sizes, 1.9, 2 meters, 2.2 and 2.4. And the reason for the 1.9 is because it fits perfectly in between Prosecco vines. Good to know. Right, well, let's get inside and look at some detail. Now looking at the Elche, straight away you can see with this pulley here and these 4 belts, they're 17mm B section. I mean, they're designed to transmit torque to the machine. And talking of the transmission, we've got the Lombardo Engranaggi transmission here, which again is built for strength and power and transmitting all of that energy. Now the whole thing is built to last. It's very, very heavy duty. Just to get a tape measure out, you can see here, this is 100 millimeters, this section of tubing. And in fact, the webbing here is 10 mil. I imagine the tubing is between 8 and 10 millimeters. It's just heavy duty, it's built to last. And when you think, when this is on full offset, the kind of force is going through these arms, and the reason they are 160 millimeters in height is just to take all of that twisting, all that torsion force. And in fact, to help along with the movement of that, you can see all of the pins have got their own little grease nipple there, so they can all be lubricated with that shell lubricant, and it's going to make sure that that grease is going to keep everything moving nicely. It's going to keep it supple for many, many hours or hundreds of hours of use. Now, if we then start looking at the cutting deck itself, you can see there's all these folds all over the place. Of course, every time you get a fold, it's a really nice, strong part of the structure, so there's no going to be very much twisting going on at all. And then as you go inside, making sure it's off, you can reach inside on the top surface here. You can actually feel an extra layer, an extra skin of steel, and that's to help protect the top side from all of the stones and bits and pieces that might be running around inside. So the really clever bit is that the bearing's attached to the roller, so the stub axle doesn't actually go around, which means the grass or growth can't really get wrapped around it, which is rather groovy, so it's always going to be kept nice and clear. Now, you can also see through this little hatch the rotor with all the hammers on, but it's actually not so easy to see, so let's get it on the bench and have a closer look. Well, here is the rotor out of the Elche. It's 152 millimeters in diameter, which is pretty chunky, and you can see this really lovely spiral pattern that you have that the hammers make. Now, if you imagine a 4-cylinder engine, you wouldn't fire all 4 cylinders all at the same time. It'd be a horrible thump and a vibration. You do them all in sequence, and it's the same with this. So basically, this removes a whole lot of the vibration and the noise from the cutting mechanism. Now, a couple of other things to mention on here. You can see these brackets here, and also the hammers themselves are all forged, so they're really, really tough. They're not just cut or laser cut or water jet cut out of steel. They're actually forged, so they're squished together, so the steel is really, really strong, and then they're welded all over the place. So make sure they're really definitely secure onto this shaft. Now, the nice thing about that also, if you notice, there's a sort of a teardrop pattern. And that's also to help remove some of that vibration. So if you're hitting stones and things, they're kind of glancing off rather than just smacking in a direct kind of fashion. So again, all of this has been designed to remove some of that vibration, remove the noise, and make the whole system last a lot longer. Now, when it comes to the bearings, you can see on either end, you have these really lovely roller bearings, these taper bearings, and they're also individually greased. You can see the little grease nipple extension there on the end. And they're actually held onto the chassis with 7 bolts. So they're really firmly, securely positioned, but also you can keep them lubricated with that shell lubricant to make sure that that grease is going to keep things moving beautifully for the whole length of its life. Now, if you have particularly stony ground, or you've got to get rid of the stubble from a cornfield, you can actually replace these hammers with these blades. Now, because they're all individually attached on that bolt, then if a stone should hit them, they'll sort of move out of the way, lessening the load, or the shock load at least, going onto the rotor. Now I think this shaft from the Alce is big and capable at 152 millimeters in diameter, while the one from the Toro is an absolute beast at 170 millimeters in diameter. But the same can be said for the rest of the machine. It's just that little bit more heavy duty, a bit more rugged, a bit more capable of handling that agricultural abuse. I mean, for an example, if you look at this chrome tube from the shifter, you can see that actually, I'll just get the tape measure out. Look, it's 60 millimeters in diameter, and it's about 10 millimeters thick. I mean, you're never going to bend that. That's super, super strong, and it's going to last for ages. But also look at the metalwork. All these folds and ridges, again, just like the Alce, they're there to make sure that the thing is rigid and it's strong. It's even got extra folds on all of the edges to keep that rigidity in every possible angle that you can think of. Now, you can tell just how heavy duty this is by its weight alone. The cutter is 2.4 meters wide and it weighs 770 kilograms. That is a lot of material, and that's definitely going to keep you working out in the fields for a very long time. Now, a couple of other features we should talk about. Just like the Alce, the Toro has the same roller design, so the bearings are attached to the roller with the little stub axles, so no tangling there. But also, just above those, you can see these little pins. This is actually the rake that goes on the back. So you imagine each of these fingers is just dragging along the ground. It can move up and down to go with the contours of the ground, and it just picks up all of those sticks, particularly the vines in your Prosecco field, and it actually picks those up, and then it throws them back into the rotor to mash them up into chips, into that mulch. So they're very, very useful from that point of view as well. Now, just on the side here, you can see when you thought 4 belts was enough on the Alce, this one has 5 17mm B-section belts. That's definitely going to transmit a ton of torque. And as far as torque transmission goes, the prop shaft here is a category 8 with a shear pin, and on this model it's a category 5. And one other thing to mention is you can get a wide angle version of this, so it can transmit more power when it's in its closed position. So all in all, if you've got a big, powerful tractor and a lot of mess to tidy up, these are the machines for you.